Good Woch. Welcome to tonight's Shir, Motzei Shabbos, Parshas Truma. My apologies for those who didn't get the message about the delayed time of being 8:30, but if you're not on my mailing list, so if you would send me an email, I'll include you on the mailing list, and then you'll be informed in good time of changes of time. So let's go straight to our Shir. And so something which is Parshas HaShavua. So actually, Baruch Hashem, making chasana, and in preparation for the chasana, I was learning Memorim of the Alter Rebbe in the Siddur, which talks about preparations for the chasana, about the brachas of the chasana, etc. And there I found something very interesting, which connected to something which was been bothering me for many years. So we're looking here at a Gemara Sukkah. The Gemara Sukkah Daf Daled, end of Summit Base, tells us, it says in the Mishnah that if the Sukkah is less than 10 tefachim high, then it's not valid. It has the minimum height of 10 tefachim. So where does the number of 10 tefachim come from? Says the Gemara Itmar, says Rav, and Rabbi Chanino, and Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Chavivo, etc. We're going to know all the details. He says the following. Oroin Tisha. The Oroin was 1.5 amos tall. So an amo being 6 tefachim, so 1.5 times 6 equals 9. So the Oroin stands 9 tefachim high. V'kapoires tefach. And the lid of the Oroin is the kapoires, that's a tefach thick. And the Gemara later discusses where do they get this number from. Meanwhile, so 9 and 1 equals 10. Harikan asara. So here we have the height of the Oroin. In other words, the space between where the Kruvim are is 10 tefachim above the ground. The Eibishter says, I will meet with you. The word moed, like ohel moed, means a tent of meeting. I will meet with you there. And I will speak to you from above the kapoires, from above this lid of the Oroin. The Shekhinah never came down into this world. Neither did Moshe and Eliyahu go out of this world. And it goes into discussion. By the way, if someone can give me a Maramokim where the Rebbe explained what he emphasized so many times, so I'd appreciate it, and we'll share with it with the Olam the next year, Bez Hashem. Upon him, they have the idea that there's the world, and then there is the Kivyochel, the presence of the Shekhinah, and this is the separation, and so the measurement of Olam Hazeh is up till 10 tefachim. That seems to be the gist of the Gemara. However you understand it exactly, later the Gemara backtracks on this and says it's Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. But meanwhile, we have this Gemara that the source of the height of 10 tefachim to define the height of a sukkah, and then you have the toisus underneath, which you have on the which says v'hod ba'inon na megabe Shabbos mechitza asara meyacha yalfinon. So the source of the 10 tefachim height to define the Rishus HaYochid is also taken from the Oroin. That's what Tosus says. That the Oroin it's placed in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Kodesh Kadoshim stands 10 amos high. So what's the point of saying that the Oroin is a Rishus HaYochid or something when it's in a Rishus HaYochid in any case? That's what was bothering me for years. My suggestion was that the Oroin is a Gashmi and above is Ruchni, is spiritual and is physical. And so that's the idea, that within the 10 tefachim is the physical world, and above the 10 tefachim is the spiritual world. But meanwhile, I see here in this Maimer in the Alter Rebbe Siddur, now that is in the Siddur Imdach, Siddur Tfilas Kol Shana, After Birchas Hamazon, then there are several Mamorim, quite a few Mamorim, which the Alter Rebbe said. Most of them was said at Chasanas. This was said at the Chasan of Tzemach Tzedek. And he's discussing there about Kos Shabroch, a beautiful Maimer. And so he has here the following, that he says you have the Kos and the wine. So you have Torah, you have Halacha, and you have the application. So let's say you have a Halacha, which is talking about an ox which gored a cow. So that is an application. In it, there is a seichel. So the seichel is like the wine, and the application, the case in hand, that is the cup. That's part of the discussion there. So meanwhile, let's keep to our point. So the Alter Rebbe says the following. There are many halachas which you don't have a clear explanation in Alpi Nigla. Kamoi b'ilchus Shabbos. Halacha Ravachas is a well-known halacha that Rishus HaYochid goes up till the heaven. Oile ad l'rokia. Rishus HaRabim, the public domain, ein lo tefeses elo rak ad asora. Ve'ein bo zeh ta'am nigla. The Alter Rebbe says that there's no clear, evident reason, logical reason why the cheshbon of 10 Tvachim. Aval al derech nister. But in the way of Kabbalah, Chassidus, hatam mevoyer al pikis ve'arizal. This is well explained in the writings of the Arizal, which means the writings mostly of his Talmidim. We have very little which the Arizal himself wrote. Never mind. The Rishus HaYochid, who olam ha'atzilus. Yochid means there's only one, unity, uniqueness. Olam ha'atzilus, that's the level of atzilus, where the word atzilus means eitzel, it's close. It also means perhaps endowing, giving, but it's a level where of closeness. And lefisha yichud oiren sof baruch hu bein etzolim beoirus v'kelim. There is a unity between the divine infinite light and the beings in the level of Atzilus, namely the Oiris and the Kalim. And they're familiar, the Loshem, which is brought in Tanya also, Ihu v'chayoyichad, Ihu v'gamoyichad. So one of the explanations is referring to the Oiris and the Kalim. We're not going to go whole beer in Chassidus, but meanwhile in Olam Atzilus, there's an Olam of oneness. Then he adds another word. Why is there the oneness with Hashem on the level of Atzilus, but not lower? Because of the line and the thread of divine, of the infinite light, radiates in Atzilus. Just forgive me, I think it's halacha shir, but just to explain this bekitzer, you have the way it's described at the beginning of Eitz Chaim, the tzimtzum and the oir panui, and there is a lack of clarity, and then there's a pencil of light. And that pencil of light comes down. That's after the tzimtzum, there's a pencil of light. That pencil of light, that oir, that kav, v'chut, continues all the way until Atzilus inclusive, and then between Atzilus and subsequent Olamas, Yasir, sorry, there is a parasol, there's a curtain, there's a barrier. So in Atzilus, there's still the chut, the kav chut of Oiren Sof. And therefore, beautiful, Alter Rebbe says, Oile adl rokia. When we say Rishus HaYochid, Oile adl rokia, this means that there is this light which is all the way up, from Atzilus all the way up. That means that Rishus HaYochid, Oile adl rokia. In Nigla, you could say, Rishus HaYochid ein lo gvul. Adl rokia is because it's the kav v'chut which is connecting all the way up. At shoyrish kol ha'makifim b'chinas atzmos ensof, b'yachaticha, etc. But after Atzilus, lower than Atzilus, there's a pargoid and a parso. There's a barrier, a curtain, a drape, whatever, which is intervening between Atzilus and Bria. And kav v'chut, v'kav oir sof, there is the end of the kav, so to speak, at that point. And then into Olam Biyah is called Alma de Prudo, the worlds of separation. So this is so. Meanwhile, we've appreciated that the lashon Reshus Hayochid Oila Ad L'Rokia in Kabbalah, it means that there is this hotline, this thread of light, pencil of light, all Ad L'Rokia, all the way to mile. And then you have lower than that is Oila Mizbiah Tura de Pruda, and he uses it says Oila Ad Rak Ad Asorot Tfochim. Neged Yid Kisri Tato in the Noiga. He says the 10 Tvochim correspond to the 10 crowns of Noiga, and he doesn't explain anymore. So I don't have the explanation why after 10, why, etc. But meanwhile, we have here a deeper explanation of the idea of the separation of Shusayach and Shusarabim, which seems to tie in with what I said before, that the Oroin and the Kapoiris, as exalted as they were still Gashmias, and therefore they are the Asara Tvochim of Gashmias, Torah de Pruda, and higher than that is connected all the way up. Just want to throw in one more gedank, which you're learning in this Maimer. The Maimer starts off with a story of the famous Tana who is dancing at the Chasnas. But he's juggling Hadassim, he's juggling 3 Hadassim. And then it says that when the other Chachomim, they were not so impressed with his antics, and they would say, "Komich siflon sabo," that you are embarrassing us with your entertaining. Later, when he passed away, the Gemara says that there was a pillar of light, Amuda Denura, pillar of flame, all the way up, and then his colleagues said, "Ahanele." 3 explanations. One said Shtuse, his foolish behavior. Some say Shitze means the reeds of Hodos, like a reed is a Shito. Some say Shetise, sorry. Another says Shitze, his policy. They saw him, and the way he explains in the Maimer, he was such an exalted person that he could be in Olam Hazeh and be connected all the way Lamaila. He had Moichen de Gadlus. So whilst he was dancing at the Chasnas, he was also at the same time connected Lamaila. Now the Alter Rebbe doesn't spell this out, but it makes sense that why he has this Amud Denura, why he has this column of light going all the way up. Because this is a whole word here. If you in Olam Atzilis, you got this Oila Ad L'Rokia. And therefore, when he was Nifter, so you had here this Amud Denura, Oila Ad L'Rokia. That's just lehoisif. Right, let's go on. That was Gishmach Inyan, Lav Davke Lahalocha, but Alter Rebbe says that in Al Nigla there is no hex explanation. Okay. Last Sunday, I was on the train going to Golders Green, and Bahashgocha Protis, I met an old acquaintance from Manchester by the name of Rabbi Yehuda Leib Whitler. And we were chatting a little bit. I told him, he asked me about a project I've been involved. I told him about the Siddur. And he tells me, "Oh, have you ever looked into the difference between in Nusach? Some Siddurim have Tiferes, Klil Tiferes Berosh Nosato Loi, whereas most Siddurim don't have it. Where does that innovation come from?" So I admit that I hadn't noticed this. Kivyochel, when I worked on the Siddur, I did do comparisons of Nusach, and yet somehow this eluded me. And so I was very interested, came back home and did some homework. And what I discovered is that this is addressed by Rabbi Yaakov Emden. To explain to you, Rabbi Yaakov Emden, he prints his Siddur, I think it's Tov Kuf Gimel, 2 years before the Alter Rebbe is born. Rabbi Yaakov Emden spent enormous effort in analyzing and crystallizing the Nusach HaTfilah. I mentioned this in the past. He had a contemporary called Reb Shlomo Zalman Henna, and they have major polemics, and they are published. Well, you have the Sefer for Rabbi Yaakov Emden called Luach Eresh. But meanwhile, he published a Siddur, and in his Siddur, he addresses this. And I want to share that with you. before doing so, I'm showing you on the upper part of this screen at first I looked in many Sidurim and it's all just Nosato without Nosato Loi. As you can see here on the right clip, there is a Siddur printed in Shin Pei Gimel, and it's an Ashkenaz Siddur, and it has Nosato. But on Friday, I managed to find a Siddur published Tov Ayin Gimel, that's also 50 years before the Alter Rebbe is born approximately. And that's also printed in Berlin. And it has here Nosato Loi. But then now let's read what Rabbi Yaakov Emden tells us. Nosato Loi, Kein HaNusach Shel Ashkenazim. As I say, I looked at many old Ashkenazi Sidurim from 100 years before him and I couldn't find, but finally I found one. V'im omnom loi, the word loi seems to be superfluous. And therefore, I wasn't accustomed to say that word. And indeed, the Nusach HaSfardim, which I confirm is true, is without the word loi. And nevertheless, I didn't allow myself to erase it. V'loi oid, not only that, but now I think it is correct. And I'm going to stop here for a moment and just look at the verse, the phrase here. The Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkoi. Moshe will rejoice with the gift which is given to his portion. Ki eved ne'emon korosoloi, because you have referred to him, you have called him, entitled him a devoted servant. Kililtif eres, a crown of glory, beroishoi, on his head, nosatolo, you have given to him. Be'omre lefonech har Sinai, when he stood before you at Mount Sinai, he brought down 2 luchas, and then it tells us about Vasham. What Rabbi Yaakov Emden is bothered by is if you say Kaliltif Eres Beroishoi Nosato, Hashem, you placed a crown on Moshe's head. So why do you need to have the word loi to him? You placed it on his head. What's the to him? So now he re-examines this phrase and he says that the word base, the letter base, sorry, sometimes it's instead of not in, but to. Like be Moshe Diber is actually le Moshe Diber. He spoke to Moshe. Uvadover hazeh einchem maminim. That you don't believe ba dover hazeh means you don't believe le dover hazeh. And so it can, the word, the base, you have also, or be on behalf of, or for. Now, Yaakov Avinu, it says, Uveisho shomor. He guarded the sheep of Lovon be'isho, in order that he should acquire his wife. And therefore, he says the following. Kliltif eres leroishoi. Hashem made a crown which would be suitable which would be fitting for Moshe. It's not as if Hashem actually took a physical crown and put it on Moshe's head. Hashem kivyochel formed a crown leroishoi for Moshe, and then nosatoloi. So he understands the word beroishoi rather than physical. You place a crown on his head, and therefore the word loi is superfluous. He says, no, you made a crown for his head, and you gave it to him. And then he says that also some of the Ashkenazi Rishonim would make set numbers for how many words there are in a brocha. So Rabbi Yaakov Emden says that the word loi added fits to the number of words in this paragraph. I did try to find a little bit more about the numbers of words in the paragraph. I didn't really get a clarity. I saw a number of several paragraphs together. I didn't go into that. But meanwhile, what I'm just sharing with you is that this word loi, well, Rabbi Yaakov Emden already saw it in Sidurei Ashkenazim, and also what I saw is in all the Sidurei HaArizal, which were published before the Alter Rebbe published his Siddur, One was in Tovkuf Mem Aleph, second Tovkuf Mem Ches, third in Tovkuf Nun Gimel, the fourth one I don't remember, second Tovkuf Sam, whatever. The fourth one was perhaps later than the Alter Rebbe, but in all the Sidur Arizal, with all the Kabbalah stuff, there it does have the Nusach Eloi, and it seems to have been accepted in many Ashkenazi communities, and the Alter Rebbe also followed that. Okay, just a bit of background for that word and a bit of clarity why it's added in, although it's not an earlier Sidurim. Let's move on. So here a practical thing, and that is, someone writes to me, he was davening at the Omid, and he started coughing. His cough was so persistent that he wasn't able to continue. And so he's asking, would it have been appropriate if someone brought him a glass of water to say Brocha Shahakal and drink the water and then continue davening? Or should he do the respectable thing and bow out and let someone else take over? And this question could be in Chazor Hashatz, it could be earlier on in davening. I looked up my notes from a couple of years ago. We had a discussion about a person who's needs to drink very often. Is they allowed to sip water during Psukkah Zimra, etc.? And I found at the time, and you have a reference here in the, if you have the notes, you have a reference to a Sefer Sherlin B'Dorshin, volume Ches, and he allows the sipping of water during Psukkah Zimra. I was saying a bracha before. So my reaction to this question, whether he's allowed to make a bracha shahakal in midah shmon esrei, is actually you don't make a bracha on water unless you're thirsty. But if you needed to swallow something, let's say you're having a pill, a tablet, and you needed some water to swallow the tablet, you don't make a bracha, because water is only considered a benefit and enjoyment when you're thirsty. If it were lemonade or orange juice, yes. But if it's water, so we can read that, we have it from the Alter Rebbe's Seder Birchas Hanenin, it's Perek Zayin, Halacha Zayin. Ein mevorchin al hamayim shahakal niyo b'devoroi lifneihem haber nefashos rabos la'achreihem. The water, the bracha said on water before and after is elo k'sheshoyse letzomoi. Only if you're drinking because you're thirsty. Aval imeshoyse lahavliya lugemosoi shechen chanokotu. But if you had something which you are eating, the word lugmo means like something which like gedoyle legimo shemekareves. You're chewing something, whatever, and it got stuck in your throat. Then you have something stuck in your throat for this, and you have water, you don't make a bracha neither before nor after. Because the enjoyment in water is only if you're thirsty. If you're not thirsty, then it's not considered an enjoyment. And back to, therefore, I don't see any difference between something stuck in the throat or having a cough. I believe it's the same thing. So to drink water because you're coughing, I don't think you make a bracha on that. So then comes the question, okay, not a bracha. What about whether he's allowed to drink in the middle of Shemona Esrei? So I'd just like to just throw in something. What would happen if it wasn't Chazar Hashatz? It was his own Shemona Esrei, and he still has this fit of coughing. He can't give it over to someone else. And I don't see it such a big deal. It's in order to facilitate. You should be able to continue davening. I don't see this as, all right, we're davening, but you're and you're stuck. You can't go further. I think it's legitimate to have it, to sip a bit of water to be able to continue in your tefillah, in your Omer Lifnei HaMelech. Let's move on. So now, the next point which I want to share with you is become quite popular of late, that people get a coin which was given by the Rebbe to someone, and they make a piece of jewelry, a necklace, and the question is whether it's muksa or not. And then also it can be a question of $1 from the Rebbe. I just want to throw in, there was a time that the Rebbe would give children by the door. This is before the dollars. He would give children to put in the pushka. And those who were a bit more shrewd would switch with other coins. But then Erev Yom Kippur, particularly, there's like it's a minute to have plates in the shul for people to give money for tzedakah, Erev Yom Kippur especially, and there were literally hundreds of plates from the entrance of the shul at the back of the shul 770 till the Rebbe's place. And there was an occasion that it took the Rebbe 40 minutes to go from the entrance till he came to his place. And there's all of the hundreds of plates, and the Rebbe was putting in each one. And at some stage, Rabbi Gronal or Sholem comes with another bag of coins because the Rebbe had run out of the coins which were in his pocket. And of course, each one who has his plate there quickly switched the Rebbe's coins with others. At any rate, there's Baruch Hashem available coins from the Rebbe, and people make them into jewelry. And the question is, at what stage are they demuxified? Yeah. So we have here actually in Siman Shin Gimel, we have a halacha which is based on a Mishnah in Shabbos, Perik, I think Perik Hey, Peirefes, which is taught this Bamei Isha Yotza. So Peirefes b'Shabbos alo egois v'alo even, sheyichadose lekach v'yotzes boy. So imagine instead of a button, imagine you have on one side of the garment, you have a big loop, and on the other side, just plain fabric, and you put in a knot or a stone, a small stone, and then you put the loop around the stone, and that acts as a button, and it holds it in place. I never tried it, but I can see how it would work. Remember, like the old duffel coats. So that's what this is. This is this idea to have to use a stone. Now, a stone is muksa. So how could you use a stone? But it says the Shulchan Aruch sheyichadose lekach. If you have designated this stone to be used as a button, so then it is no longer muksa. A stone is otherwise muksa, but if you designate it therefore for a clothing, it's not muksa. Says the Shulchan Aruch further, aval ala matbeya, but to use a coin as a button, also lifreif boy. Shabbos, you cannot use a coin as a button on Shabbos. The lav bal tiltulhu, because it's a money is not permitted to move. V'loi mahani bo yichud, and even designating is not adequate. It's not adequate to demuxify the coin. And then he says, if she wore it from before Shabbos, she's allowed to wear it on Shabbos. Now, on these words where the Shulchan Aruch says v'loi mahani bo yichud, I want to just, in case you're asking why I'm not bringing the Alter Rebbe, unfortunately, in Siman Shin Gimel, the latter part of the Siman is missing the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. So where this would be is in the Alter Rebbe is not there. In our what we don't have it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'loi mahani bo yichud, hainu l'Shabbos achas. If you designated the coin for the one Shabbos, then it doesn't lose its muksa status. It's still a coin. But if the yichud was not just for the one Shabbos, but you now designated this coin, it's going to be a button. For now, evermore, it's going to be a button. Then even a coin can also be no longer lose its muksa status. Now, at this point onwards, since we designated to be used as a button, it's no longer muksa. And he quotes two sources: Tosfos Shabbos, which is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, and Rabbi Akiva Eiger, possibly he quotes him. So we have here the Shulchan Aruch says a coin is muksa, and you cannot designate it. The Mishnah Berurah says you cannot designating for one Shabbos is not good, but if it's designated as a button indefinitely, then it does work. Chaznish disagrees with him, and he says that even designating La'olam was not good enough. Okay. So now, then we have now from the Shmiras Shabbos Kehilchasa. So the references are totally off, but okay, I have to deal with that. So Shmiras Shabbos Kehilchasa writes, Matbo is kesef. coins, asimonim, if you remember those tokens which were used for telephones, which are instead of money, and magnetic cards like credit cards, they are muksa. But then he says a necklace or a keychain which has a coin connected to it for decorative purposes is mutter l'taltala. You may carry it. It's not muksa. He says it's going to stay impermanent. And he's responding in his notes, responding Chaznish. Even if you say a coin doesn't help to designate it, because you may next week change back and use it as a coin. But once you've modified it, you've made it into a keychain, you made it into a necklace, then it's going to stay that way. And then he says everyone would agree that it's not muksa anymore. 2 points which I want to say. Number one, he seems to say that magnetic cards are muksa. Of course they're muksa, but what level of muksa? You've got what's called klisha malachta le'isser, which you are allowed to move l'tzarech gufa mekoymai, a tool. If you wanted to improvise with it, to do a permitted activity, that's okay. Then you have something which is not a tool, and that's like a stone. That's called a muksa gomer. So to use a stone to hold the door open, that's not allowed because it's not a keli. To use a screwdriver to hold the door open is mutter. That's called a tzarech gufa mekoymai. Money, I said in the class, I said to the Talmidos, money is useless. It's nothing you cannot do. It's not made for doing any skill. It's not made for fixing. It's not made for eating. It's not made. It's not like a knife and fork or a hammer. It's not a tool. Money is just a means for barter, for exchange, of value, but it doesn't have a use. Not, at least it's not made for a use. Credit cards, by contrast, I believe are basically keys. It's a key to access money out of the machine, to access your details, how much you are in credit, or chas v'sholom fakir. But it's a key. So I just see a credit card as a klisha malachta le'isser, and therefore no difference to a hammer or a screwdriver. So if I wanted to use a credit card, let's say, to be able to push open a lock or something, a latch, I think that would be mutter, like no difference to a screwdriver. Okay. Be that as it may, but it seems to be quite clear that when a coin is made into a piece of jewelry, for sure it loses its muksa. If it's just been placed into a locket or something, then also the Mishnah Berurah takes the view that it's not muksa. Although, as you see, others I mentioned are not so confident because it can still be used as money. Interesting. I remember in the Argus catalog, they used to have in the jewelry section, they used to have a kind of locket, which was a necklace, and it had like a 10-pound note folded up. And you could see the just the head of the Queen Alea Shalom. And it was like if someone's out for the night and then they need to have taxi money, they can take it out and use the money. So I've been teaching that this is muksa, and I think that is actually true because it's even as it's made into a piece of jewelry, but the kavana is that if you're desperate for cash, you have some cash with you. Right. So now let's go to the second question, though, about banknotes, about $1. So is $1 the same as a coin? So there's a reference I have here to a sefer called Migdonis Eliyahu, Rav Rubinstein, who was very short-lived Rav of Antwerp, died very suddenly. His Sforim are really very, very Geschmack Sforim, as I can see just online, whatever. Now he says that he discusses this whole thing about coins being coins from a tzaddik, and then he says, what about money, cash, banknotes? Shtoris Kesef, he quotes the Minchas Shabbos and says it's muksa machmas chesoren kis. And therefore, especially if it's a kesef from a rebbe, for sure, it should be muksa als machmas chesoren kis. So he makes the banknotes more muksa than the coins. Now, on the left of the screen, you can see this is from the Minchas Shabbos, which is a sefer on Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and he talks about money in note form, pizuten, I don't know which kind of language that is, bankova biletten, banknotes. So he says it should be kumuksamach masasarin kis. The kolshikein hum in your cholok. You have blank papers, muksamach masasarin kis, for sure, banknotes. So it reminded me that Reb Nussen Vogel Olav Shalom once told me, or perhaps one of his children told me, that as a kid, a young boy, he lost a £5 note. And it was just looked like a plain piece of white piece of paper. And he lost it in the street, and he was walking through the street looking for this piece of paper, like along amongst all the litter which was in the street. So I did a bit of a search online, and you can see on the screen a £5 note, which was launched in 1855, and they write it was still in circulation until 1957, which fits the years when he was a young boy. And so a £5 note was a piece of paper, and it had a written, printed that I promised to pay the bearer on demand of £5, signed by the Bank of England, the chief officer, whatever it may be. I can understand such a piece of paper. I would not want to put down a cup of coffee. I have a nice polished table, and I don't want to ruin the surface. I wouldn't. So I put down a piece of something, a coaster. I wouldn't put such a banknote because it might get spoiled. I can tell you today, a £5 note, a £10 note, actually a £50 note, but a £10, $10. If I need to put down a cup of coffee and I've got only a $10, I don't care if it gets dirty, gets crumpled. Who cares? So I don't think that banknotes are muktzemach chesaron kis. The word muktzemach chesaron kis means that it's something which is designated for a purpose, and you would not improvise with it. So a shoichet has a knife, and he spends hours and hours honing it. Then to go and cut a piece of string or to cut a piece of card, he's not going to do that because it's put in so much effort, so much invested. So he's not going to ruin that, and so on. So muktzemach kis means it's such a prized object that you would not improvise with it. That's the word of muktzemach, and that's why it's muktzemach. In addition, the Alter Rebbe takes the view that muktzemach kis is not only the value, but also it's a klisha malachta le'isur. Okay. So coming back, so muktzemach kis is like a mukshagam, where you're not allowed to improvise with it. If it's just a klisha malachta le'isur, you are allowed to improvise with it. Therefore, what I'm seeing is, I think nowadays, a banknote, I would say is not muktzemach maskasaron kis. It's klisha malachta le'isur. If you needed the space, so then you'd be allowed to. The mice, I said this over last night, but one of the rabbonim of the present, he says, I don't see the tzorich to move on Shabbos. Who needs to move the Rebbe's dollar? You'd have to move on Shabbos. And if it is a klisha malachta le'isur, then just to show it off to your friends, I don't think would be okay. That's not l'tzorich gufa mekoyim. It may be something else, but I don't see it's not l'tzorich gufa mekoyim. So I don't see it as such a strong muksa. If you needed the space, you need to move it because you don't want to lose it, that would pack up to him if the klisha malachta is to be awesome. What happens if you've laminated it? I've always been not so sure about this. I think that if you would take a $100 bill, which is laminated, and go to the bank and ask them to put it to your credit, I don't think they have reason to refuse it. And therefore, it's still money. All right. The point I received from the Rebbe Tanya, Tovshin Mem Beis, this thick Tanya, and it had $1 inside it. So I took some sellotape and stuck it in place. I used the Tanya on Shabbos also, but I don't handle the dollar. What I'm saying is it doesn't have the muktzemach maskasaron kis, but still to handle it, it's still it is money. and it hasn't been changed, hasn't lost its value, and therefore I think it still is muksa, at least as a Griechische Nachten is. Is there any difference if it's plasticated? I'm not so convinced, actually. Yeah, I'm not so convinced. Although you could take the view that like the Mishnah Berurah has said, and like the Shabbos Kochosa has said, if you're miyachid it liyolam, you miyachid it as what? If you make that dollar into a piece of jewelry, I understand you change its status, but if you say it's a Rebbe's dollar and what have you made it into now? The fact you've plasticated it, I don't see it changing it from being a dollar and a piece of, currency. Let's go on. In any case, all right, it's not really, it's Geschmack in Yonim, but it's not necessarily Lamaisa. Lamaisa, you put it keep it in one place and you don't move it on Shabbos. There's a lot in the Gemara, because we have a theory, that doesn't mean we go and carry out Lamaisa. Okay. What else do we have here? So here is a not Lubavitch Shaila. Someone says they don't think the bank would accept a laminated dollar. All right, if they don't accept, I would say I want to speak to the manager. Let's move on. Someone asked me, Polish in Germany davens in our shul quite often, and he asks me, he's minoyik to say, he's only going to say every meal of Shabbos, the Kodesh Shabbos Kodesh. Polish Yidden, such a minig at every, I don't know, all Polish Yidden, but it's quite widespread, the Kodesh Shabbos Kodesh. So he asks now, what about Malava Malka? Should he be saying, or is it out of order to say, the Kodesh Shabbos Kodesh at Malava Malka? So first of all, I said, why are you eating Malava Malka if not for the Kodesh Shabbos? But here is a fascinating sikha. This is in Chelik Lamed Vav, Parshas Beshalach. And the Rebbe picks up, it talks here in Siman Shin, very short Siman Alter in Shulchan Aruch, and in Mechaber it's just a mamash of one line, and the Alter Rebbe has 3-4 seifim. Talks here about whether you should cut back in your Suda Shlishis to make it earlier so that you should be able to eat Malav Malka. And he says you don't have to make your Suda Shlishis earlier because this sort of Malav Malka eino choiva kolkach elo mitzvah min hamuvcha bilvad. And the Rebbe is uncomfortable with that lotion elo mitzvah min hamuvcha. If you want to diminish, say it's not so important, so you'd say eino elo mitzvah bialma. Mitzvah min hamuvcha is actually building it up rather than diminishing it. So why does the Alter Rebbe use eino choiva kolkach elo mitzvah min hamuvcha? It's a choice. And he goes into the whole discussion about the posuk Vayevorech Elokim Kadesh Oisrei. And the Gemara says Kidshei B'mon Borche Berche B'mon v'Kidshei B'mon. Berche B'mon, that on Friday came down enough supply of mon for 2 days. Kidshei B'mon, he sanctified the day Shelo Yordo, that mon didn't come down on the day of Shabbos. So now let's focus on the 2-day supply of the mon. So every day, people tend to eat a day meal and a night meal. I know in England it's also minhag to have also 11s and to have scones and tea at 3 p.m. But I'm talking about back in the days of the Midbar, they had a day meal and a night meal. Okay, so they had a double portion of mon on Fridays. So one portion was for the day meal on Friday, one was for Friday night. Then they had the Shabbos, the second Oimer for the Shabbos. So one was for the day meal. So you can say the second one they had for Suda Shlishis. Wait a minute. If people are used to eating a supper at night, to say that the Eden during their 40 years in the Midbar, it came night, they had nothing to eat, doesn't really make sense. And therefore, if it follows that they had, like every other day of the week, they had also enough for Suda Shlishis, but they had also a Motzah Shabbos meal. So now the Rebbe says that although the Kedushas HaShabbos is finished the moment Shabbos goes out, but the Birchas HaShabbos continues even afterwards. So you got the baby, yeah? And therefore, the Rebbe explains That's why the Alter Rebbe refers to it as mitzvah munah hamuvche. Why is it not just a separate thing? He says it's a chelik of the 3 meals. And the kiyum gimel sudas. The mitzvah hamuvche, when you eat the 3 meals, and you also have melava malka, then you are expressing your remembrance of the Be'er Chibimon. The Be'er Chibimon was also for the matzah, for the night meal. And that's that. In other words, he's saying that the melava malka brings out the shleimus of the Sudas Shabbos. So coming back to the question, should you say, if you say Kavod Shabbos Kodesh, I'm thinking now perhaps to say Kavod Shabbos, not Shabbos Kodesh, because the Kodesh is already gone already once Motzei Shabbos, but at least it is still, it's certainly, we eat Melav Malka, it's Kavod Shabbos. I don't think that's out of order. A couple of points here. If you have mezonis on, someone's asking, on Melav Malka, is it still considered a Suda, Mitzvah Namuvcher? Is it a must to wash if I'm not so hungry? Sida Shid is asking the question, and I can tell you that Yoidei Dover say that there were times that the Rebbe, for whatever reason, didn't have Hamoitzi on Shabbos, and Motzei Shabbos it was Choik V'Lo. By the Rebbe, Motzei Shabbos to have Melav Malka was something which he dafka washing. It's and part of it is, there's the Etzem Luz is nourished by Melav Malka. And the Etzem Luz, the Gemara says, doesn't have Hanor from Elu Hazeh. It comes, so how does this work? Dafke because Motzei Shabbos. You've already eaten 3 meals, you're not hungry. So why are you eating? Just because of the mitzvah. So it's not because you are enjoying, it's because of the mitzvah. That's why the Etzem Luz has Hanor from it. Because it's a Suda which is not L'Shem Agashmus Dika Hanor, it's just L'Shem Shemayim. That's why the Etzem Luz is nourished from such a Suda. So, right. So now, just Erev Shabbos, someone asked me, I was short of questions, so Baruch Hashem, another few questions came in, about the repeated verses in davening, and he mentioned 5 places. In Hallel, Hashem Melech, Akil Shomo, Oz Yoshir, Yoshe B'Seiser, and Hallel. So, I'll try to chaparine in the next few minutes. Hopefully we'll finish in time. So here we have in Siman, in Shulchan Aruch, it is in Siman Nun Aleph. So we have Noyagin Lichpoil, Koil Anashom Tahal Yudke. Why do we say that pasuk twice? Because it's the end of the Psukkah de Zimra, so we repeat it kind of to celebrate. We've finished now. My machshava zori is like it's similar l'moshul imav sedre of repeating the last pasuk. It might not be the same inyan. There's efshel asayim b'toyre. Okay. Then also, it says Shulchan Aruch to repeat the pasuk Hashem Yimlech L'Olam V'ad at the end of the Shira, because that's the end of the Shira. As you know, in the Sefer Torah, the Shira is written in a different way with lots of spaces, like Oriach Agabe Leveno. So the last phrase of the Shira is Hashem Yimlech L'Olam V'ad. Then you have Kivosus Parei, that's after the Shira. So we repeat that pasuk Hashem Yimlech L'Olam V'ad because that's the end of the Shira, although we say the pasuk of Kivosus Parei afterwards. Another discussion. It says, some say that because that's also from the Shira, and that's really a debate. He refers to Yeridea, whether Kivosus Parei is technically a part of the Shira. Okay, in the note which you have here on the bottom, that's from the Siddur Habo Aleinu L'Toiva, and so on this spot. So you have here from the Levush, he has another reason that the 12 psukim correspond to how many times we say Hallel in Rosh Chodesh, and the repeat is corresponding to Hallel in Shana Mubaris. And yours truly has a note, but actually on Rosh Chodesh Tishri we don't say Hallel. Okay. Now, what about saying Hashem? So this is for Hashem Melech. So by Ashkenazim, Hashem Melech is not said before on a weekday. Apparently, it's said on Shabbos and Yom Tov. The Bes Yosef says it's customary to say it and twice, and he gives a reference why we say Hashem Melech twice. He gives a reference to Tikkun Zohar. So last night I spent a long time trying to find it in Tikkun Zohar, but I have the print which has got the Bir Hagra, and it's a different pagination. But today I managed to find it. So before we read further, someone just asked, is it Chabad Minhag to repeat the pasuk in Shnai Mikra? There's something in the Rishimus, which were released after Gimel Tammuz, and there's something about not repeating, but it is ambiguous, and I'll tell you what the ambiguity is. You can see now some of these Shnai Mikros for him. At the end of Shnai Mikra, they say the last pasuk twice, then Targum, and then again twice the last pasuk. So in other words, 4 times. So when it says in the Rishimus of the Rebbe, Ein noyagin lichpeil pasuk ha'achrin, does it mean we don't say it a 3rd time or that we don't say it a 4th time? It's not clear, and therefore I've continued saying it once, as in other words, as a 3rd time, but not a 4th time. Okay, let's come back to the Hashem Melech. So it was a reference to the Tikkun Zohar, and this is in Tikkun Ayin. It's in Kabbalah, and I could have just said it's Alpi Kabbalah, but I'm curious. I want to share my findings with you. It's still going to be Kabbalah, but he talks about here in the upper branches, middle branches, medium branches, and the lower branches. And he says you've got the upper ones are like the fathers, and the middle ones are like the memanon, the officers, and the lower ones is like the shluchin, the ones who are sent out on missions. And then he talks about how you have basically Hashem Melech, Hashem Melech, Hashem Yimloich is connecting. I believe it is in a higher level of perhaps Chabad and Chochmah and Yud and the Hey Elyon, and then you have a second Yichud, which is the second Hashem Melech. That's basically what he's saying. This morning I used there's this Pirush Mosuk Mitvash, so he explains this a little bit. Basically, it's 2 levels of Yichud, and therefore you have Hashem Melech, Hashem Melech, Hashem Yimlech twice for those 2 levels. About the Nikudus, which you can see over here, we have discussed this in the past at great length, of how you have the segels, the 2 letters with segels, and that equals the same letters, same Nikudus as Melech, and then the Pasachs, and then the Malach, and then the Shvo Choylem Kome, it's Shvo, well, Chirik Choylem Shvo, the same letters as Yimloich. I'm not going to go into the whole discussion. It's going to take a lot of time, and if someone's interested, I can find where did we discussed it in the past, and you can look it up and follow it online. I see a couple of points here. Why would it be necessary to eat bread for Etzem Luz? Well, it says it's nizoin. It's nizoin from Lav Malka. So, yes, why dafka bread? All right, dafka val milvilnish, yeah. Couldn't be bothered. Yeah, it said, wait, look in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Shin. It's mitzvah to prepare a suda and to have a special tavshil, to have the table set. I know in America, this manazeh, people go shopping on Motzei Shabbos. We're losing it. That's a certain geschmack of you don't want to take leave of Shabbos, so you have a Motzei Shabbos, you have the table set with a nice tablecloth, and you relax. What's the rush? Yeah, let's go weiter. Then, so that was, we addressed the Hashem Melech's, I know it's still Kabbalah, Chelan Shoma, and the end of it, and Hashem Yimlech Nos Yoshir, because it's the end of Sukkot, end of the Shira, Yoshe B'Seiser. So here we have in Shulchan Aruch, this is in Reish Tzadik Hey, within Motzei Shabbos, it's customary to say Bihi Noyam at the end after Ma'ariv, and that's the brocha when the Mishkan was built. Look, as again in Yonah de Yoime, when the Eden finished making the Mishkan, so Moshe Rabbeinu gives them a blessing. Bihi Noyam Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu. that Hashem, the pleasantness of Hashem should be bestowed upon us. That which we do with our hands should be stable and it should be effective, etc. The Pashtus is you're going to a week of back to a week of work, and therefore you ask Hashem's bracha that your week of work should be successful, which is also the reason why we don't say it when there's a Yom Tov middle of the week, because you don't have a whole week of Masi Yodeinu. Fine. But meanwhile, there's also the minhag of adding Yoshev V'Seiser, and to also repeat the Pasuk Oirich Yomim. And this, Al Yedei Kach, Nishlam Hashem HaYotzi Mimenu. And by having the additional Oirich Yomim twice, that completes the Shem, which is the Hashem's name, or the Remez, which is through saying what. So of course, we're all curious what that's all about. This is a letter of the Rebbe on the lower part of the screen, quoting the Zohar. There's what's called Shir Shel Pagoim. Yoshev V'Seiser, as is said by Levi and Sagedach. Which I'm sorry also to share with you that over just Erev Shabbos, Michael Rabin passed away. Chaim Shmuel Mendel, I don't know what his father's name is. Hopefully the Levi will be tomorrow sometime. At any rate, by Levi, when says the Yoshev V'Seiser, that's a Shir Shel Pagoim, a form of protection. But then the Rebbe further on, he brings, and obviously our condolences to his brother, who is normally a very regular participant in the Shir, sponsored many, many times. So wish him Arichas Yomim and Nechama. So coming back, so the Mizmor has got 130 words, and that's the Skula. There's a number of 130. So I was curious, what's the significance of 130? So there is a nasty malach known in short as the Samach Mem. So his full name is Samach Mem Aleph Lamed, and he's a troublemaker. And that's 131. Samach Mem Aleph Lamed is 131. And so the Shem HaOyotzi Mimenu is we want to have the number of 130 somehow, I guess, to be Machdim Refuah Lamakot, that we should have a protection, that he shouldn't have a Shlita. So that's the cheshbon of the Yoshev V'Seiser, and adding the last posuk twice. And that's again going into a week of activity, as we don't want that malach to cause us trouble during our activities during the coming week. Why do we repeat the phrases in this latter part of Hallel? That is, with this should be our last thing. So someone's asking why 130. Yeah, good to kasha. So Ima Koilo. So the last phrases of Hallel were said by several people. We just learned this in Psochim towards the end of Gemara Psochim, and we have the Kuf Yotes that they had here when Shmuel Hanovi comes to the house of Yishai, and he asks for the various sons, and then each one is not suitable. And then it comes to David, who wasn't even home; he was looking after the sheep, and then he gives him the brocha. So there he anoints him. So Oidecho ki ani soni, Hashem, I praise you because you answered me, said David. Even Moasu Haboinim, the stone which was despised by the builders, becomes the cornerstone. This was Yishai. He sees the son who was despised by all his brothers now has become anointed as a melech. So he says this pasuk. Me'es Hashem oisos, the brothers could see clearly this is from Hashem, so they acknowledged. Hashem, Shmuel is so happy that he's now managed to find the replacement for as a new king. Hashem. The brothers say, "Oh no, Hashem Mashiach." You can say tongue in cheek. They were worried. Hashem Mashiach. David is also anxious. Oh no, Hashem Atzlichano. Then Baruch haba b'shem Hashem is said by Yishai, greeting Shmuel, who had come from the Beis Hamikdash. Shmuel from the Mishkan, rather. Shmuel, who has come from the Mishkan. Beirachnuchem mi Beis Hashem. I'm giving a brocha from Beis Hashem. Keil Hashem vayor lonu. Hashem has given his as his light. It was said by all of them. Isru Chag Ba'avosim was said by Shmuel. Keli Atavo Ideko was said by David. And Lekaya Mameka was said by all of them. So what we're seeing here, that these psukim from Oidecha till the end of Hallel was the whole conversation at the time of the anointment of David. Says the Gemara. Here we have Tanya Rebbe Koifel Bodvorim. Rebbe Lozer ben Parto Moisif Bodvorim. My Moisif Lich Moi Ababai Moisif Lich Poil Meoid Cholamato. So Rebbe Lozer ben Parto would, from Oidcha onwards, he would repeat the psukim. Says the Rashbam on the space, on the other place, Koifel Badvorim, and then he's Meoid Cholamato, Veli Nire, Mishim Kova, Yishai, Shmuel, David, V'yechel. In honor and recognition that this is a whole conversation between Yushai and Shmuel and David and the brothers, Shu'amruhu, Me'oidcho, Lamato, Kida, Amor, and Leel. This whole conversation, which is on the previous page over there. Therefore, Koifel Oiso, the reason why we repeat is to remember that these phrases was a whole conversation, although the repetition doesn't add to it. It just brings our attention that there's something special about these psukim. That's the background for the repetition of those psukim in Hallel. So I've actually gone over time, and so I wish you all a good voch, and we should see a geula shlemo, and will be able to say Oidcho Hashem ki onaftabi, and we should see a Yeshua shlemo for all of Klal Yisrael, b'chol mokim sheheim, especially the Eden in Eretz HaKodesh, and b'chol mokim sheheim. Call to a good voch.
Good to go.
Good luck.